Hey,
Oh
everybody.
no, we lost him.
Welcome to Winephabet Street. It is a wonderful Monday evening. And did we lose them, Deb?
We lost him. Lisa, Steve, are you there?
They're frozen on my end.
Yeah, they're frozen on my end too. Oh my gosh! You know, it wouldn't be a Winephabet Street without.
Wait. Maybe they can just go back and sign back.
Maybe
in,
they'll
right?
try and come back without any technical difficulties. It wouldn't be the same.
Right. Well, so anyway, we are here. They come back on. We are just waiting for them to sign back in. But welcome to Winephabet Street. Today we are up to the letter P, and we are talking about Petite Sirah. And for those who are watching, you can see that we have, there we go, they are back. Okay. So today we are up to the letter P, and we are talking about Petite Sirah. And we have two special guests with us today. Our first is Lisa Howard of Tolinas Winery, and then Steve Tenbrink of Tenbrink Vineyards. So they are going to give us the lowdown on everything there is to know about Petite Sirah. So for those of you who do not know,
to recognize that they're father and daughter.
Oh yes, so father and daughter. Yes. So those of you who do not know me, I am Lori, your co-host. I am a UC Davis winemaking graduate. I am a WSET level 2 graduate, champagne specialist, and someday service specialized. And my husband and I also own Draceana Wines in Paso Robles, where we focus in on Cabernet Franc. And my co-host is Deb.
I'm Debbie Gioquindo. I am known as the Hudson Valley Wine Goddess. I'm a wine blogger and wine writer, and I am co-host of Winephabet Street. I am chairperson for the Hudson Valley Wine and Spirits Competition. I am a certified specialist of wine and a wine location specialist, import and champagne. And I'm the author of a book, Tapping the Hudson Valley, Day Trips and Weekend Itineraries to the Hudson Valley Wine Region. And in the spring, I'm going to be opening a restaurant with my husband and his cousin Gus in North Wildwood, New Jersey, called Trio.
Excellent.
So, Lisa and Steve.
Well, I don't know. We just grow grapes and make wine. I feel like our resume is doesn't even compare.
So I've been growing grapes since '96, and so Petite Sirah has always been special for me. It's probably the reason that we built the winery. When we started out growing it, Abe Schoner from Scullion Project bought some grapes from us and started making wine and became one of his most successful wines, and kind of outgrew his facility in Napa and talked us into building a winery. And he said that, you're growing the grapes, and I'd like to teach you how to make wine, and I think it would be a good thing for you. And so I decided to build a winery. And it is a good growing region, I think, Sassoon Valley. I've sold to a lot of different winemakers that have sourced grapes from different areas, and they've always been drawn to my vineyard. I think we have kind of a unique climate here. It's somewhat mild. I know Petite Sirah can't really take a lot of heat, but yet it has to be warm enough to get the, not become too acidic and balanced. It does need warmth too. Kind of an in-between temperature, I guess, between like Caneros or St. Helena. Yeah. But anyway, it's a great wine to work with. Very deep, rich color. So it's really a kind of a winemaker's dream to work with. It's has all of the components to make you look make you shine.
All right.
You can tell he's very passionate.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
That's awesome.
He's definitely the grower and my mentor, and of course my dad. So he's been growing. He's been farming since 1982, but growing grapes since '96, and making wine for how many years now?
Since 2007 was my first winemaking vintage. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I ran away from the farm. I don't have any true training in winemaking. I've just learned by watching and reading and asking a lot of questions. But my background is actually engineering. So it all kind of comes together with science and math and research, right? But yes, my husband and I own Tolinas Winery, and we purchase most of our grapes from my dad and my brother who grow them, and then a few other growers as well. And we have our own vineyard on our house property that's managed by another vineyard company.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's definitely all the science background. I mean, I'm a microbiologist that found my way to, actually, if you really want to get into it, I'm a marine biologist who found her way to microbiology, who found her way to, education of, adventure ed, who's a winemaker. So it's, you never know which way the path is going to get you. But we're going to start off with our
engineer who.
There you go.
Shall we?
We're just gonna go with our little video, and then we will get into it. Okay.
A-B-C-D-E-F-G-H-I-J-K-L-M-N-O-P Q-R-S-T-U-V W-H-Y-N-Z Q-R-S-T-U-V.
Nope, still not working. Still not working. Every month, Lisa and Steve, it's a different issue with that video. I have no idea.
It looks okay for us. We don't know any different.
Yeah. All right. Well, at least it looked good. Yeah. I don't know. But anyway, before we actually get into the whole interview process, I have to give a huge shout out to Amber Burke of Wine Travel Eats, because she is really the person who got this connection for us. And so I want to give a big thank you to her for reaching out to you on our behalf and allowing us to get you on Winephabet Street. So thank you, Amber. Thank you.
Thank you,
Amber. So first of all, we are all about Petite Sirah tonight. So Steve, you were kind of going into a little bit about it, but before we get into the grape itself, I want to talk a little bit about Sassoon Valley. Yes, I said it right. Yes. Okay. Makes me so happy, right? So the AVA itself was established in 1982, which is only 1 year later than Napa. So can you just go into a little bit of history about the AVA and, what's special about the AVA, and let's hear why it's so fantastic.
And where it's located. People that don't know.
Oh, that's true too.
Yeah.
We're actually the neighboring valley to Napa. We actually border Napa Valley, and our climates are very similar. We actually put up weather stations all throughout our valley. It recorded our climate on a minute-by-minute basis, and we did this for quite a few years. And it really matches up. The cooler side of our valley is much like Carneros, and the warmer part is much like the St. Helena area.
Yeah, we like to say it's like Napa Valley shrunk down into this neat little small area. All the different microclimates in Napa in one little area that you can visit in a day.
So we know that we have the climate. Our soils are somewhat rich, and so we've had to try to combat that with different cover crops and also by deficit irrigation to try to stress the vines back. And I think, you're probably asking why back in 82 we're this unknown valley. And back then, we were probably selling a lot of jug wines, or we were just a few wineries, not very many. And Sebastiani, back in the days, that's where we first sold our grapes to. And we just didn't really have the notoriety. And over time, as we got to be more wineries starting open up in Sassoon Valley and making good wines, we've kind of raised the bar, and it's becoming more well known. I think now when you say Sassoon Valley, people say, "Oh yeah, I know about that." So we've come a long ways, probably just really in the last 10, 12 years. But we really have a lot of potential, I think, there's a lot of new wineries opening up. Camus has moved in, and they're going to be opening a winery in Sassoon Valley. They love our valley. They've actually have contracted a lot of grapes out of Sassoon Valley and planting a lot of vineyards in Sassoon Valley because they have a lot of confidence in Sassoon Valley.
When they say that Sassoon Valley is like what Napa Valley was, 40 years ago, right? So just like Napa, we were known for stone fruits. A lot of the canneries, right? Like canning peaches and pears and all the different stone fruits that were growing. In fact, my dad's wearing a Susun Valley fruit growers hat, and it's their celebration hat, and it has a big pear on it. And that's really what our valley and even Napa was known for until the grapes really started to shine. So we are mimicking their history. We're just a little bit behind them. But it is a very similar growing region, and maybe the name Sassoon being a little harder to pronounce delayed us a little bit in our recognition. But I think once you come out here and start tasting the wines, it becomes quite memorable.
The word Sassoon actually means west wind, and
in the Patwin language of the original Indian settlers.
Yeah. We're close to the coast, and the influence from Sassoon Bay, and we have the warm air from the upper part towards Vacaville and the cooler part down towards Vallejo, and the air rushes in to fill that void. And so we do have this west wind that does blow, which is really good. It really cools things down, keeps our climate very moderated. I think it's a good thing. Yes.
Do you have a big diurnal shift, or is it more of a constant temperature?
No, we have a large shift from days and nights. That's what makes us a wine grape growing region. Warm days and cool nights. You could have as much as 40 to 45 degree difference between the days and the nights. Yes.
When you asked earlier about where we were, I thought it might be interesting for your guests if they've ever been in California and they've driven on I-80 anywhere between Sacramento and San Francisco and saw the Jelly Belly factory or the Budweiser factory off I-80. We are actually right there. And most people just drive right past us. And they have no idea they're passing a 1982 AVA to their left. So
absolutely. I know the Jelly Belly. I do know the Jelly Belly. Do you think that it's just more of a marketing type thing that Napa kind of got that jump early, or in 82, where like you had mentioned about the stone fruit, were you still really kind of into that stone fruit aspect?
Yeah, Napa really got a jump on us. I mean, they started growing grapes and started to develop a real high reputation for a grape growing region. And it really took off. And we're just behind. So you have to realize probably 15 years ago, well, it's been more than like 20 years ago, there was a lot of pears here. And then the cannery started to shut down, and we didn't have a place to sell the pears anymore. Becomes more and more people are buying fresh fruit now, not canned fruit. And so our industry really declined. And then we started to go into other things, and we started growing grapes. And like I say, over time, we've started to build a better and better reputation over the years. We started out, kind of in the jug wine era and selling to Sebastiani. And then as time went on, we started to do better grape growing practices and learn more. And we really raised the bar. Yeah.
Yeah, I think everything you said plus what you're saying, it kind of is all coming together at this point where the landowners in our valley, they didn't need to make wine for their income. They were farmers. They grew the grapes and they sold the grapes to other wineries. And then once they started realizing what these wineries were doing with their grapes and how good the wine was, it was like, wait a minute, we can make good wine here. So then the family started dabbling in making wine themselves and then realizing it was good. And then that just kind of domino effect. So that's really what happened here. I mean, there's been families making wine here for many, many generations. But as far as the growth, more recent growth is that the growers themselves are realizing that they're the potential to make wine themselves. And I think maybe some of those winemakers that were getting really good deals on grapes for many years are like, darn it, they figured out our secret.
Right? Why sell all this grapefruit when we're going to make it ourselves? We're going to make it ourselves. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so allowed to blend, like Napa can blend a 20% percentage of Sassoon Valley grapes into their grapes and still call it Napa Valley.
Right.
So we're starting to do that, to keep their costs down because our grapes were much more reasonable than Napa Valley grapes. Yeah. So, but it just goes to show you that we had a level of quality that was very similar to theirs, that they were willing to blend into their wines. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have to ask this because I promised Amber I would. So tell me, why is Sassoon Valley Petite Sirah capital of the world?
Okay. Well, yeah. I think so far it's always shined. It's always been one of our best grapes. And like I said, I was growing grapes back in '96 and started selling to different winemakers, and they were always drawn to our grapes. And they sourced them from many areas in California. These guys that just solely made Petite Sirah. That's all they made was Petite Sirah. And they would buy the grapes from different areas. And ours was always his favorite. At least that's what he tells me. And so there's just been a lot of awards and I'm involved with PS I Love You. We've done some tastings with it, and our wine has always shined. It's really been one of the best. Yeah.
To me, something that stands out is the tannins and the sugar. What was that?
Deb, we didn't hear you.
What makes the Petite Sirah grow so well in Sassoon Valley?
Yeah, so I think as far as to get to that, the flavor structure is, I think, what shines.
Did you hear me, or am I?
We recently have started coining the term #Sassoon soft tannins because we're realizing that for some reason, and we don't exactly know why, the tannins in Sassoon, specifically for Petite Sirah, are softer than other places. Now, Petite Sirah can really be just, super grippy and drying and intense. And in fact, we just tried a Petite Sirah from another region that really showed that. And we are realizing here, for some reason in Sassoon Valley, those tannins are more calm. Now, they're still very structured and still great, good tannins, but not that kind of overly drying, abrasive tannins. We suspect it's that good shift in temperature, and that maybe we are a little warmer than some of the regions growing Petite Sirah, and especially maybe warmer than some of the regions bottling 100% Petite Sirah. So you're not going to find that many, if I can say this, 100% petites in Napa, not that many, because they're really focused on Cabernet, right? They have found their wheelhouse. And it's not to say Napa couldn't grow petite, because they absolutely can. It's just that they're so well known for Cabernet, they're not going to be planting hundreds and hundreds of acres of Petite Sirah in the face of Cabernet. So we've been able to take this climate that's similar and show what Petite Sirah can be like. And it can hang a long time here without, you know.
I'd like to talk about our climate a little bit. So we don't have, the fog line kind of breaks just right at our valley. It's very early in the morning, you'll see some fog, but there's a blockage there. It doesn't really, we have sunshine much earlier in the morning than Napa does a lot of times. The fog hangs in there much longer there. We have more daylight hours that are, the sun is actually shining on the grapes and it's still very mild. Our average temperatures during the growing season is around 86, 89 degrees. I mean, it's very moderate, and then it cools down at night. The wind blows through there, like I was telling you about the west wind. And there is still microclimates within our valley too. The deeper you go into our valley, the warmer it gets. The closer you are to the Sassoon Bay, it is cooler. And so most of the Petite Sirah is kind of grown in that middle area there. That's where between not real hot, not real cold. You know, it really suffers in really hot weather. The grapes can really, it's a very thin skinned grape, and it doesn't take heat very, very well. It will shrivel. And so I think you need a kind of a moderate climate.
Wow. So I'm kind of, I have to say, I'm surprised. I have not obviously grown Petite Sirah or whatever, but I kind of always assumed it was a thick-skinned grape, and that, you know, because of the tannic structure and the color. Oh my God! Like, yeah, 2% for 2% Petite Sirah, paw, it's purple. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, you're
I always
right. No, but it actually is a thin-skinned grape. But what happens is when you make wine with it, the skin really dissolves and breaks down into the wine, and it really has a lot of color pigment in the skin. It is very thin skin, and it's one of the riskiest grapes too, because it's very susceptible to botrytis. If you were to have a rainstorm or, you know, any kind of inclement weather getting close to harvest, a lot of guys end up losing their crop. It's a kind of a risky grape.
And, you know, I think that might also be another thing to consider why is Sassoon known for Petite Sirah, is because we don't have that excess moisture in our air. Exactly what he was saying about the fog breaking early. So the growers aren't fighting the mildew as much as maybe other regions that have more moisture. I mean, they still have to be careful when they're growing, and it is very hard to manage that in the vineyard. But anywhere that has more moisture, those growers are going to be pulling their hair out and saying, why am I growing this? This is awful. Like, I'll plant something else, anything, right? So we can kind of deal with that here because the air doesn't hang on to that fog as long.
But now, wasn't Petite Sirah created specifically to resist the mildew? So you're talking about botrytis. You're
right.
Talking about the botrytis.
Those are two different diseases. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's one of the reasons why it was created. It is not very susceptible to powdery mildew. But it is more susceptible to botrytis.
Yeah, I said that wrong.
And yeah,
that's why he's here.
Yeah. Yes, and it's great. Yeah, and it's one of those grapes that you can kind of easily grow organically because it doesn't really need a lot of fungicides for powdery mildew. But if you were to have like a rainstorm come, or during when it gets close to ripening, then it becomes really an issue. Yeah.
See, that's why I love Winephabet Street. Like, I honestly always thought it had to have been a thick-skinned. It was a small, thick-skinned grape because
I think so much. to come
power and punch.
The seed tannins. And so if you're not careful with making Petite Sirah and you're exposing the seeds within there, they can really get out of control pretty quickly.
Okay. Deb, are you back or are you frozen still?
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you see me?
I can
Can
see
you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. This is a technical glitch.
You guys
of
are all
evening.
broken up.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's my internet connection.
Yeah, because I think
it's the internet for me because I keep getting booted out personally of the room.
All right. So then I'll go on.
So I can't wait to listen to the program.
So I'll go on with some more interviews. What type of soil do you have in Sassoon, and what Petite Sirah enjoys?
Yeah, I think our soils are very well drained. I think that's really important, and it's one of the ways that we're able to kind of control the vigor is through deficit irrigation and not giving them too much water. We want the vines to be somewhat stressed, and the soils are quite rich. They really are. I can't say that. I mean, there's certain areas where it's rocky but most of them are silty clay loam, and the vines can be overly vigorous. So we do a lot of hedging, leaf pulling, and deficit irrigation, and cover crops, and let the cover crop pull the moisture out of the ground and kind of compete with the grapes. And we're planting the vines closer to compete with one another. Yeah, we have to put a lot of work into the quality too. Another thing about Petite Sirah, it tends to really overset. Way too many grapes will end up on the vine if you don't go in and cut the grapes off. You have to go in and seriously thin the grapes down. We do this every year. We shoot position to separate out the shoots, but then we go in and actually cut the clusters off. The ground is just covered. I like to show you a picture. The ground could be solid, and you would think there's no grapes left on the vines, but then you look up and say, oh yeah, it's why you had to do that.
My grandma, his mother, would be like, what are you doing?
You're wasting, right?
Yes, you would be terrified. But you think you're pulling off, just like when you're thinning a fruit tree, really. You think you're pulling off like way too many or cutting off way too many. And then when the grapes mature, it's really obvious that
we really want the clusters to have their own separate space. We don't want the grapes to be laying on top of one. We want the sun to go all the way around the cluster. It's really for the skins to develop those beautiful colors, and it needs sunlight. If they're laying on top of one another, they'll tend to be pink. And so we separate them out, and so we have a lot of indirect light all the way around the bunch. We don't want them touching one another, so it takes a lot of time to thin them out so they're that way, because if you don't, they're going to be all piled on top of one another, and you're not going to get good sunlight.
And what you're talking about? It needs the sun. So what's
this
your
is covered already, because I keep getting kicked off, and I think it might be due to ice storms around here. But is Petite Sirah late ripening, early ripening?
It's pretty late. Yeah, it's probably just before Cabernet.
Yeah, it's one of the last things we bring in.
Yeah, we're looking at most of the time October. Yeah, depending on how the growing season goes, usually the beginning of October or very late September. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And then going back to the sunlight, what's your philosophy of like leaf layers and stuff? You've said dappled a few times. So are you the orientation towards the sun obviously has to be humongous for a good Petite Sirah vine. But what about the leaves? Are you trimming them back so there's more exposure? Or do we want less exposure?
Absolutely. We go in and we leaf pull around the bunches. We want a lot. We don't want direct sun beating right on the grapes. We want more of an indirect light. There's certainly going to be areas of the vine where the sun does directly hit the grapes, but it's just over a short period of time as the sun moves, or the wind is helpful too, because it kind of blows the leaves around and kind of acts like, so it breaks the sunlight. And otherwise they become fried or sunburned, and we don't want them to be sunburned. We want a nice indirect light. Yeah. So what we do is we have ours are faced east and west because of the wind, because the west wind blows. And so on the south side is where the intense sun is. And then on the other side is you don't have, it's a little more protected. It's more protected. So we pull just the one side. The north side is always, much more shaded. So we just pull leaves off of the one side. And it seems to work really well that way. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm really, really thirsty, so I would love to pour. We have, Debbie and I have the 2017 Tolenis. Okay.
I'm having major problems.
Right. Well, I'm getting ready to drink, Deb, so you can pour. So this is the Sassoon Valley Red Blend. And this, Lisa, you said was 60% Petite Sirah?
Yeah, to be honest, it could be as much as 65. When we blend this, I'm more worried about how it was tasting and how it all came together. I always consider this a Petite Sirah based blend. It's really the foundation of this wine. The addition of the Cabernet and the Zinfandel is just to take it, just a slight variance from a standard Petite Sirah, and I'll tell you why, to be honest. We did this because my dad's 100% Petite Sirah it's pretty killer. So if we were both selling 100% Petite Sirah and one says Tenbrink and one says Tolenis, we would be competing maybe a little more than we wanted to. So I decided to make ours a red blend. So that's the backstory on why we have a red blend and he has a Petite Sirah.
The behind the scenes.
So a lot of people say, "Oh, aren't you in the same family?" And I said, "Yes." And we see each other all the time. We have dinner many times a week together, but we do have separate bank accounts.
There you go. So I want to share with you in the chat one of our very he's a super fan. He's here every month with us. Michael Kelly. He has named you, and I'm not aware if. Oh, you're familiar with Michael Kelly?
Kelly.
Okay. So he has named you the top Petite Sirah of 2020, Steve. So he wrote an article. He put in the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat or not, but I wanted to let you know, if you were not aware of that he talks about you very highly.
We had the pleasure of having Michael Kelly for a tasting, and he is a very knowledgeable, very kind man, and we have been so fortunate for his kind words. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk a little bit more. So I'm guessing then that this is not co-fermented.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I kept getting booted out. I think it's the ice storms that we're going to have or having.
Right. You're a lot clearer. Your image is clearer now too, so I think it's better now.
So are both of you.
So by your comments, I'm going to say that this is not co-fermented, that you've picked this individually and they ferment independently. So you want to just take us through your winemaking process for this?
Sure. We definitely ferment each one of them separately. I always am just grateful that Mother Nature gives us varieties one at a time. So as a winemaker, we can manage them that way. Because if they all were ripe on the same day, I really don't know what we would do.
Absolutely.
But we typically, for this blend, the Tempranillo was fermented first, I would say. And then the Zinfandel, actually, for this blend. Then it was the Petite Sirah and then the Cab. We fermented them all. This lot, the Petite Sirah was our biggest lot. So it went in a large, what we call our redo, which is a wooden fermenter that held, I think we did 8 tons that year. Yeah. 8 tons. Oh, wow. That's quite a bit for us. That's a very large lot for us. And then the Cabernet, the Zinfandel, and the Tempranillo were done in much smaller lots. We do ferment in, actually what we're sitting on right here is what we call a punch-in, which is a large wooden barrel with the head removed. It's upside down, so we can use it as a table. And we ferment inside of those. We like to do a lot of gentle pump overs during fermentation. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but we do a nice long cold soak when we bring it in. And our destemmer also is very gentle, and it destems almost whole berry. So when we're fermenting, the berries are intact. They don't go through a crusher at all. They destem right into the punch-in, and they look like cute little blueberries. My kids think they're blueberries. And like I said, cold soak for quite a long time. We like to have that native bacteria and yeast and all of that do some extra work on the grapes before we launch into fermentation. We think it gives some more complex aromas and flavors. And then we ferment pretty warm. I will say, when I first started watching him ferment, I thought he was absolutely nuts. I was like, everything I read says you're doing this all wrong. And he's like, well, do you like my wine?
It works.
All wrong. And
I'm gonna eject. What temperature are you fermenting at?
Well, we can go as up in the 90s. We have to really watch it.
Very
because we don't want to.
Oh my God, I would be paranoid. Oh my God.
89 is kind of where most of it is, and then especially during peak fermentation, and then but we like we actually will. After we come out of cold soak, we'll immediately heat the grapes up. We warm them up to about 80 degrees and then let them start getting going. And it usually goes up to around 89, 92, right up in that area, sometimes 93. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart. Let me tell you, it is not for the faint of heart.
And is this just for your Petite Sirah? Is this how you're forming your Petite Sirah? Is this your winemaking philosophy for all your reds?
Especially Petite Sirah. Okay. But all the other wines also, but especially.
Yeah, most of the wines that I make, I do pretty much the same protocol. Yeah. Okay. The longer cold soak and then a warm fermentation. Yeah, I don't really haven't done any cold fermentations. Yeah.
So I have dabbled in some cooler fermentations like on Zinfandel, and I've been pretty happy. But it changes the flavor profile. So, and then Pinot Noir too, I feel like it changes sometimes on how we go with that grape also. And then, something I have found, especially with his vineyard, is you cannot get away with a hot fermentation if you're Yan. Now I know we're talking kind of technical here with making wine, but if the innate nutrients in the grapes comes in as really healthy and you don't have to add anything during fermentation, you can push these boundaries, push these limits, these longer cold soaks and hot temperatures, because it's not going to get reductive on you and stinky. Now, if you pull from a vineyard that's not healthy or pull from a vineyard that doesn't have good yams, you can run into some issues. So I kind of feel like there should be a disclaimer that says, don't try this at home. You don't know what you're working with.
Right.
But I mean, his vineyard always comes in, basically doesn't need any additions at all for nutrients, maybe just a little bit, just to make sure you don't get a stuck fermentation. So you have a lot more flexibility in that way.
So I am totally enjoying this wine, by the way. It's deep, and the aromas are so deep. It's kind of, typically you get red fruit or dark fruit, and this has kind of got them both on the aromas. And it's beautiful. It's got a little bit of, my husband will yell at me because when I say this, he's like, that's not that. But I get spearmint. I get like a kind of a mint in the aroma, but I don't know. Do you know what I mean? He always like, that's not spearmint. I'm like, well, that's spearmint to me. So to you, you know. I
know what you're saying. I can see where you're going with that. I can see where your thoughts there.
Okay. And it's got just it's got an herbal, the spearmint. It's got an herbal on the palate also, but it's not green.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Definitely herbal. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. But not overly green. It's not not like it was picked too young, underripe.
I think it has a lot.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's
I know.
I hear you.
Debbie's having a rough day.
So it's very nice. It really is.
Great.
It is. So now, Steve, you're 100% Petite Sirah with 10 bring. Bigger, bolder? How would you?
Yeah, it's definitely a bigger wine. It's has a little bit more intensity, but it's still very soft and rich. Has some great cherry notes, some wonderful fruit flavors that really are expressed when you on the finish. It's really turned out to be. I thought my 15 was the best wine that I ever made, and then we bottled the 16. And it was in bottle, and I didn't think it was going to live up to 15. And after it was in bottle for about 3 months, it like surpassed 15. It's just incredible. Yeah. So I'm really happy. It's just it's pretty unusual. And and these are the type of wines that you don't always hit every year. I don't think our 17 is going to make the match here. Every vintage is different. That's what's exciting about winemaking and out there in the vineyard. The weather that happens that year, things change, and so it's hard to have a perfect one every year, but it's always exciting when you do hit these, and it really is a pretty exceptional vintage. Yeah, pretty proud of it.
And so, Lisa, this 2017 Tolinas is your current vintage?
This is what's available right now, and then we'll be releasing our 18 probably later this year. It's been blended together now, and then I like to let it
marriage.
Everybody, all the players get to know each other for a little bit.
Absolutely.
Do you use the same blend every year?
No. Well, I'll be honest. So this is only for our Tolinas brand. This is only our second blend. So to say every year, I feel like that doesn't. But no, the first year that we did our blend, it was only Petite Sirah, Cab. Petite Sirah, Cab, and Tempranillo. No Zin. And then this one incorporated some Zin. Next year's we'll probably have a little more Zin. We do feel like Petite Sirah and Zinfandel are friends. They like to go together. They have some nice balance of each other. And I think you'll see more and more of that even in Sassoon Valley, Petite Sirah and Zinfandel together. And I like adding Tempranillo into it when we can, because he grows some pretty awesome Tempranillo. It adds just this neat grapey that Tempranillo likes to throw into wine. Has this like kind of Welch's grape juice flavor that's really interesting, and then also sometimes a little bit of a smokiness. Kind of depends on the year with that also. Something we haven't talked about that just came to mind looking at these barrels behind us is our barrel program, if you can even say we have one of them. We really we prefer a more neutral barrel.
Okay.
We do bring in new barrels, of course, but we are not a heavily oaked winery. We do like the wine and the fruit to shine, and not having our wines overly oaked.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of our, like my Tempranillo is mostly all neutral oak. There is not any, like Petite Sirah, excuse me.
So are you're purchasing like 1 year or 2 year old white barrels?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And yeah, we have a good source for that. And yeah, because we really want the grape to express itself. We don't want it to be covered up, with oak. It really shines. It doesn't really need oak. It really shines on its own. Some wines, it depends on what you're doing. Maybe a solid Zin could use a little bit of oak. It's just like a chef in the kitchen, when you use them for spices and how they blend together and how you feel about what they feel like. I mean, what the taste is after that you really like and want to sell to people. And I really find that my Petite, I really don't want the oak on it. Yeah, we played around with it. We've done some, and I prefer the neutral barrels.
Yep, we actually did an experiment in 2018, and we had 14 barrels of Petite Sirah, and we did 20% of them in new oak just to see the difference. And in a blind tasting, everyone preferred the Petite Sirah in neutral, not in new oak. So it really drove home for us that, especially for Petite, we don't. For me, when I taste the Petite Sirah out of especially a brand new barrel, it can actually be quite a bit more tannic than if it's right. So those tannins, those oak tannins, can really add on to the tannins of the grape. So who knows? Maybe that has something to do with our Petite being softer. I don't know. I really can't say, because we've made some, we've aged some Petite in new oak, and it's still, fairly soft compared to some others. But we do prefer Petite to be more in a neutral barrel.
Well, they say that there's certain grape varieties that love oak, and then there's grape varieties that over love oak, or that, I guess the other way, that oak loves those grape varieties. And, that could be, so you were talking about the characteristics, and that's one of the things we talk about on Winephabet Street. So if we had Petite Sirah, so if you want to describe Petite Sirah characteristics, I'm picking up a wine that's Petite Sirah, what can somebody expect in their glass if they're drinking Petite Sirah?
Well, first of all, it's going to be very dark and inky. Yeah. And it really this is a big wine. The word petite is not really proper. It is not petite by any means, and it's a big, bold wine, and you have to be careful. It can be pretty tannic if it's not done right. And but it's has wonderful structure. It's always been a wine that has been weak in color and structure. You add Petite Sirah to it, and it has a wonderful grape flavor that is of its own and very unique. Kind of I don't know. Mine has coffee, cherry,
a lot of cherry. I get a lot of cherry notes.
Blueberry.
Yeah. Your wine has a lot of on the palate. The cherry and the blueberry pop on the palate.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Black cherry and blueberry.
Yeah.
I'm really excited that Petite Sirah is being made just as a varietal on its own. It was always a blender for so many years that they never really, now people are making, as a varietal, and it's really exciting, and it's a great wine for people to try. I think it's very different.
Mm-hmm. Did we talk? I know. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, what do you suggest as food pairings?
Oh, of course, steak.
Yeah.
It loves
A nice, good bed.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know that not everyone's into red meat, but that is one thing that it's really good with. But it's any kind of pasta, it'll cut right through it, and it's a great food wine, totally food wine, and any cheese and it it's really meant with food. I think it really complements food. It really does. Yeah.
Especially if for some reason you open a bottle of Petite and you find that maybe it is pretty tannic. If you do have it with food, that typically calms down a little bit, right? Now, and then also, I mean, we should say, I mean, we don't typically decant yours because it doesn't really need it, but Petitsera is one of those wines where it can help with being open for a little while. So, you know, it can handle being decanted for a while. Sometimes we joke around and say Petitsera is better the next day. And that really can be true. And even in the cellar, we find that it's the wine that's the most forgiving if you're not topping on a regular basis or doing things like that. It has a lot of preservatives on its own. So, you know, don't be scared if you didn't finish your bottle and you need to hang over for the next, you know, hold it over for the next day. It sometimes will surprise you, actually.
And it's really high in the antioxidants too.
It's very good for you.
Yep. And I can't pronounce it.
Anthocyanins.
That's it. It's very high in that.
It's really loaded with that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
The deep rich color. Yeah. You drink this, and this will definitely extend your life.
Yeah. You have to spend
our Instagram of us all drinking Petitsera as a family with our purple teeth. So.
Yeah. All right, so we have food pairings. We have general characteristics. I have to ask about this because, quite honestly, this is one of the funniest things I have seen in a really long time, and I need to go see it live and take a picture with it. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see that, but this is
the Petite capital of the world.
Well, it says Petite Sirah, capital of the world, which is wonderful. But what I love is Napa's backside is taking shape.
That is great.
So I need to know where this sign is, because when I come, I'm getting a picture with this sign, because and I've got to ask because this is my immature mentality. How many people like drop their drawers at this sign? Like
So yeah, that's our sign, and he definitely loves to make those funny, bold statements. And his winery is one of the first ones you approach if you're coming from the back side of Napa Valley, so which is what the locals call the back hillside. And I haven't seen anyone drop their drawers, but
is it just me who thinks that way? It's just me who thinks that's like the first thing that entered my mind. Like if I was going to go take a picture, like
that's what you would do. I love it.
Just popped in my mind. Oh, see, I thought everybody would think that, but I guess not.
There are lots of people taking pictures, and definitely suggestive pictures.
Okay. All right. So aging potential for Petite Sirah. What's your recommendation?
It's just like a cab. Over years, it can get better and better. I like to, it has the ability to age. I guess that's what I want to say. With the structure and the tannins that are in the wine, it ages well. And it's something I like the fruitiness in my wine, and I like the fresh fruitiness, and I don't want that to go to the point where it becomes diminished. And I have a bottle of the 2015 here, and it's just so fabulous. It's still wonderful. I mean, now it's 6 years old.
Yep.
Really holding up, great fruit flavor. It's just such a joy to drink, and it's become a little bit softer and retained a lot of those great fresh grapefruit flavors that I like in a wine. And so it ages well. Yeah.
I did read an article that said that, it ages, around 6-7 years, but then some are made to age much longer. It really depends on the winemaker, on the producer, and how
it does. And it depends on what there's a lot of things that happen over time that change the structure and flavor of the wine. And it depends on what you like, it goes in a direction that becomes very interesting, and just that more people may want that flavor or enjoy that type of flavor, but it's kind of like the own person's palate, just like I like the Rieslings. This is kind of off the subject, but I do make Rieslings, dry Rieslings, and it's amazing over time the change in flavor of that wine. It really ages well. It becomes more herbal and eucalyptic, and a lot of the interesting flavors develop over time. But again, it's something that you have to have a palate for, and not everyone likes that flavor. So, it's all to the person itself, I think. And when you age wine and you think, God, I really like this wine better than I do the younger wine, and it's all about that personal, flavor.
Yeah, I think that the Petite Sirah, it can have a little bit higher pH level in our valley. And so at first, people would say, well, that thing's never going to last, past a year or two. How will, won't be intact because of this high pH. And we're not finding that to be the case. And I suspect that those high anthocyanins are a part and the tannin structure, the actual structure of the Petite helps with it being intact for a longer period of time. Because even your wines, he doesn't fine or filter his wines. They are pretty low sulfur too. And they're hanging in there for a long period of time. We opened in 2013 not long ago, and it was fabulous. So.
And these are really super high pH wines. They're well over 4, like 4.3. They're very high pH, but that's also, it gives us that softness too. And the finish is rich and soft. It's not that's why we really let our grapes really hang a long time too. We pick them very, very mature. They're probably like 27, 28 bricks when we pick our grapes.
Oh.
And so that's, yeah.
So would you say they're late ripening? Because I missed a lot of the stuff from my internet.
Yeah.
Right before cab.
Yeah. And we're still experimenting. We're picking grapes at different ripeness levels and trying to see, what we see makes a better wine, or are we going too far where it's not making that big of a difference, and then we have to deal with a high alcohol wine and high sugar wine. So we're still working on that. We've always been one to pick it on the riper side, though.
Yeah.
Well, I will say, actually, I don't even know.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
This alcohol level is, but
14.5.
It does not taste like it does.
Yeah.
I would say if I was blind tasting, it's a low alcohol wine. Like it doesn't, there's no in your face alcohol at all.
The blend has a lot of freshness to it. And I think that because on that year in particular, I think we did pick that Petite, well, it was pretty ripe, but I think we did add a little bit of acid to that year. So that, acid level in the blend that you're trying, that is still mostly Petitsera, that the total acidity is a little bit on the higher. So it lifts the body and makes it taste a little fresher, and versus a super jammy, like you would think, like a high alcohol Zinfandel feels heavy in your mouth and really jammy. So even when Petite Sirah is really ripe, it never has that syrupiness that Zinfandel does. Would you say? Like it's pleasant, it's lovely, but it always has a lift to it that's different.
Interesting.
Yeah, well,
Interesting.
yeah. The term, I guess, is just when they become too syrupy, they become flabby, and it's not.
Well, then it doesn't go good with food.
Yeah,
which is not our favorite.
You want it to come in and finish out clean and bright, and not too tannicky, but rich. You got to find all those balances and to make a pleasant experience. Yeah, absolutely. But it's certainly a wonderful grape to work with.
So we're at our hour, but you know what, Lisa, I never asked you, where did the winery name come from?
Right. So for my husband, Cliff, and I, our winery is Tolinas, and that came from when we bought our ranch in Sassoon Valley. We were looking through the historical deeds, trying to come up with a name for our winery, trying to get inspiration. And we found out that our property is lot 38 of the original Rancho Tolinas, which is the Mexican land grant that spans Napa and Solano County. And Sassoon Valley is in Solano County. So it's pretty much as soon as we saw that name and realized it wasn't taken, we were like, this is perfect.
that second part is very important.
It was right. It was meant to be.
Right, right. And then Steve, Michael said we have to ask you about your label, the story behind your label.
Okay, so I've been farming since '82, and I started out, growing vegetables and fruit trees, and I always had a passion for wine. And then I planted my first vineyard in '96. But the correlation is just, the earth and the tillage of the grapes and my life history. I mean, planting the vineyard, growing the fruit. The shovel just is kind of the correlation with the soil, and that's kind.
He always has a shovel in his hand.
Yeah.
That label is a statement. Yeah. Statement to you.
Yeah, it's always have one in my truck.
That's awesome.
It's prettier in person.
Yeah, so
that's awesome. That is a great story. I love it. I love it. Deb, I know you were in and out a lot.
I know, and I apologize. I don't know what was going on. It could be like I heard the winds. It could be the ice storm that we're having. I don't know. That was the first.
It's 59 degrees by me right now, Deb. So
yeah, it's probably like late 20s, early 30 degrees down here.
Yeah.
I kind of feel bad that I had all these questions and everything. I've got all these like notes and stuff that I had written down, but that's it. I'm sure you covered it.
So I just want to say thank you very much for joining us and sharing your knowledge on Petite Sirah and sharing the wine. By the way, I'm having cheese later with the wine, so just waiting for my husband to get home too.
Well, I'm going to have the rest of this tomorrow when I make this veal dish that I'm.
Oh, that will be good with that.
Yes, so I'm going to put the pork in it, and it's going to be going with the veal tomorrow.
Yeah, see, I'm one of those non-meat people. So
all right, it does a lot of other things other than bread.
Yes. But thank you so very much for joining us and for sharing your time with us and your expertise on Petite Sirah. If you just want to let everybody know, Steve, Lisa, where can people find you on social media? And then maybe, I know it's like the worst question ever with COVID because it's ever changing every day, but if people are coming to Sassoon Valley, how can they get to you?
Great. So we are both have websites. So 10brinkvineyards.com and TalinasWinery.com. And then on social media, both Facebook and Instagram, I'm on there as Talinas Winery. They have 10 Brink Farms and Vineyard, I believe. Yes. Facebook and Instagram. You can also follow my fun behind the scenes Instagram, which is Yuppie Farm Girl on Instagram.
Oh,
that's my fun winemaker behind the scenes, a little bit more in personal. And then, yes, we are open in Sassoon Valley, outdoor tasting only at this point in time, but we have a beautiful farmhouse here at our winery where actually I grew up in the house my dad built. We now have turned that into kind of our tasting area. We have a beautiful front and back lawn, and we would love to have you out for a tasting. It is by reservation, so just go to Talinas Winery and click visit, and you can make a reservation on there.
So you say something about our association?
Oh, yeah. And then we have a wonderful website for our AVA of all of our local wineries in Sassoon Valley. It is SassoonValley.com. You can see all of the wineries in our association there and their hours and what they do. And almost every winery at this point is making a Petite Sirah. And I would say that I can vouch that every Petite Sirah in our wine region at this point in time is impressive. It's consistent. I mean, everyone has their own little take. Some are a little more blueberry, some are a little more red fruit, some have a little more oak, some may have a splash of Zinfandel in them, some may not, but they're all impressive. So I highly recommend getting a flavor of Sassoon Valley by tasting the different wines here.
Fantastic.
I can't wait till I can travel and come out.
Yes, we'd love to have you.
I can't wait to get on that plane. I'm itching.
Well, thank you so much again
Thank
for
you.
joining. We
Yes.
appreciate you taking your time, and I totally love the wine, and
I do too.
we will be seeing it on social media. But thank you so very much.
Yeah,
And I hope
thanks
you
for
guys have a wonderful
Thank
week.
you.
Yes. Thanks for having us, and thanks for spreading the word about Sassoon Valley.
Oh, we will. We will.
Thank
Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Have a great
Bye.
night.
You too.